And it's an absolute pleasure to be a part of the Bay International Film Festival and to welcome you for the opening night. Very proud to be a patron of the festival, and I'm very proud to welcome these extraordinary special guests this evening. So I'm going to ask I'll introduce everybody, and then I'm going to ask a few questions, but quite quickly we're going to open up to you guys, so think about what you would like to ask. Okay, so one at a time here. Let me just introduce our guests. Pete Bowker, the writer of Eric Ernie. Pete is one of the leading TV scriptwriters in the UK, known for shows like Blackpool, the all-singing, all-dancing Blackpool, starring David Tennant and David Morrissey, 2004, I think. Then the hard-hitting Iraq war drama, Occupation, Desperate Romantics, his period drama about the pre-Raphaelites, an extraordinary range of work. You will no doubt know The A Word, starring Morven Christie, late of this parish, and Christopher Eccleston. You may also know the marvelous Marvelous. But of course, this evening, Pete is here to talk about Eric and Ernie. Now, Paul Hendy is a writer and director with a huge amount of experience in TV and film, both in front of and behind the camera. And he is here as the writer and director of the first film that we saw this evening, the short film The Last Laugh, which came out in 2016. Paul then adapted it for the stage, and it opened at the Edinburgh Festival, then toured, went to the West End, went as far afield as New York City. Maybe we'll talk a little bit about that.
No, don't talk about that. Died
Definitely
of death.
Don't
talk about that.
And is touring again later this year.
Yep.
Yeah. And finally and wonderfully, just to welcome Damian Williams, the actor who brings Tommy Cooper to life so extraordinarily in The Last Laugh. So can we just have a big round of applause for our guest, please? Thank you. Okay, so I'm just going to start by asking just a couple of questions to everyone, really. Well, first of all, to the two writers, and then I'll speak to Damian. So for the two writers, I suppose the obvious first question is, what drew you, and we'll start with you, Pete, what drew you in the first place to want to write about Eric Morecambe?
Victoria would ask me. You wouldn't say no. It was quite a strange one. I mean, I'd loved them, grown up with them, and Victoria came to me with the idea. I didn't know her. She just told the one anecdote about them messing about on a train during blackout, and the train went black, and she just needed to occupy these hyperactive pair, and said, "Look, why don't you start building double acts?" And that was the germ of it. That was it. That's what she came with. Mm-hmm. And the question was, she's a great, why aren't you writing it? And Victoria didn't feel she could write something based around two men. Mm-hmm. And of course, the irony is that film is Sadie's film, really. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I was very lucky in that regard that I'm probably here because of Victoria's ridiculous lack of confidence in her own ability, which doesn't happen often with writers, does it? Mm. So that's how it came about. And
And what was your kind of relationship with Morecambe and Wise? Had you been like a fan?
Completely. I mean, grew up with them, like most people of my generation grew up with the Christmas specials, double acts. They felt like ours. It was, the Northern thing was incredibly important. They felt like ours. Mm. And the rhythm, that rhythm and so on. And I think, most families have a kind of double act with them. And there's a stage, I think, at which every dad becomes Eric Morecambe. I think it's inevitable.
It's true.
I was torn between wearing a jacket or a cardigan tonight. I think Eric's cardigan tribute. So that, it was the... And what was clear to me as a dramatist was that, you know, Eddie Braidman is one of the great writers. He's one of the great writers, full stop, comedy or drama. And that, you know, and it was about watching how their characters emerged on stage, and once the characterisation of Eric Ernie happened, then the comedy took off.
Yeah, brilliant. It's kind of really interesting seeing both films together this evening, because obviously the first film is kind of about the end of the career, the end of the life, and indeed the lives of those three comedians, and then the next film is very much an origin story. So in sort of typical Morecambe and Wise style, we kind of saw the full story, but not necessarily in the right order. Paul, can you take the same question? Just tell us a bit about what first drew you to write about not just Eric Morecambe, but all three of those extraordinary comedians.
Yeah, as Peter said, a lifelong love of, in particular for me, no offence to Tommy, Eric Morecambe, you know, Morecambe and Wise. I grew up, I remember as a 6-year-old watching them on television and me laughing. I found them funny, but just looking round, and my mum was laughing, my dad, my nan, my granddad, my brother, my sister, we were all laughing at these two guys on television. That just stuck with me. So, lifelong obsession. And then, as I grew older, I became a performer and then a writer and director. And just, you know, I was really interested in what makes people funny. What's the difference between people who are naturally funny? I'll say this in front of Damian, who I work with a lot. Damian's a naturally gifted comedian. He's a funny man. Tommy was a funny man. Bob Monkhouse, by his own admission, was maybe not a funny man himself, but he knew what comedy was. He knew what funny was. And for me, Eric was sort of in the middle, really, undoubtedly a naturally gifted comedian, but he needed writers, by his own admission, you know. So I've always been obsessed by that. What makes somebody funny? That speed of thought just in the brain, you know, just, you know, Damian always says, I've got comedy Tourette's, he can't help but be funny. It's sort of just, you know, it's just natural. And I think Tommy was the same, and in my film there's a speech, it's in the play as well, and it's true, it's from one of the biographies about Tommy Cooper, that apparently, I think Barry Cryer tells the story, that he was sitting outside a pub and he was crying. You know, he's obviously depressed, drunk, down, and he looked up and there were a group of people just laughing at him. So Tommy Cooper crying was funny. Yeah. Well, that's actually really sad, you know. So just really interested in the whole world of comedy. Yeah, really.
Yeah. And Damian, can you tell us a bit about your kind of relationship with these characters, particularly Tommy Cooper in your case, but also Eric and
well, I think
Bob Monkhouse.
like, you know, a lot of like Paul says, you know, I grew up watching. I mean, Tommy. I used to watch Tommy Cooper with my dad, and my dad used to cry laughing watching Tommy. And I was only young then, and I used to think, why is he why is that funny? Why is my dad laughing at him? And I was fascinated. And as I got older, I got more and more fascinated. I got more and more into Tommy Cooper, and I was just fascinated with how he was just funny by not doing anything. I mean, he famously did 10 minutes in the dressing room. The stage was empty. They opened the house and he didn't come on. There's ladies and gentlemen, Tommy Cooper, nothing. And then after a while, people just started to laugh, and he wasn't even on. And then they laughed a bit more, and then all of a sudden, over the tannoy in the theatre, you heard, oh. And then people laughed again. And then he went, I can't get out. I'm locked in. I don't know where I am. And he brought the house in like for 10 minutes. And he wasn't even on stage. And that fascinated me. You know, how is he that funny? Why is that funny? But yes, so as I got older, I didn't know whether I wanted to be a stand-up or I wanted to be an actor. So I decided, you know, I was going to be an actor. So that's what I did. But my fascination, I mean, I've always been fascinated with that world, right from like the Crazy Gang and all the musical side. I was always fascinated by that to start with, and also Eric and Ernie and Tommy and the ones that we don't remember as much, like Dick Emery and all those that were on that time, and they were, you know, brilliant. And Stanley Baxter just died. Yeah, he was amazing. Les Dawson, all of those. I've always been fascinated with that world. So. And then to get to play Tommy, I mean, because when me and Paul met, we realised that we were just massive comedy nerds. And then when he wrote The Last Laugh and he gave me the opportunity to play him, it was like a gift, really. So
Yeah, I wanted to ask about research.
Yeah.
So for you as an actor, I mean,
Yeah.
what kind of research did you do,
Well,
or were you already so immersed in?
Yeah, and I think that helped because I knew a lot of the stuff. I knew a lot of the routines, and I grew up watching him because he was, he's my hero, really, one of my heroes. So I knew a lot of the stuff anyway. So it was quite easy, or easier to walk into and just play him and know exactly what in the script. Go, right, I know that routine, I know that gag, I know what he did there. So that was, I found it quite easy as as an
And
actor.
did the voice just come naturally, or?
The voice, I think, it was just by watching him, I suppose, and doing impressions as a kid, and then growing up doing impressions all the time. Because a lot of people do. I mean, he was the most impersonated man in the UK.
Of course,
at one
yeah.
point. A lot of people sound like dogs when they do it, because everyone talks like that. But yeah, so and once you've got the fez on, and not the nose, I won't wear that nose again. that nose we wore. But I look back at the film now, I like Mr. Punch.
The nose, that was my fault. The nose was a mistake.
Well, it was his fault. Yeah.
Can I ask you, Paul, a bit about research and, how did you access these characters? Was that kind of a lot of reading or
A lot of
watching
reading,
stuff,
but to be honest, it's all in there. It was all in there. I didn't have to really read it all again. I've just spent my life reading those biographies, autobiographies, any books on any sort of comedy, the history of comedy. So it's sort of in there. It's innate, really. It's all just, and then it just all comes out. So I didn't have to research it really for The Last Laugh because I felt it was there.
Pete, for your film, it feels like you probably did have to dig a bit deeper because these aren't the figures that we knew on TV. These are, this is, as I say, the kind of origin story. It's how they became that. So what was your research process?
Well, there's William Cook has done a very good biography, but better still, it's got a great index, and he has a bibliography. And there are two things really. One, both Eric and Ernie's widows were both still alive at the time, so I spoke to Joan a lot and Connie a lot. What was interesting about Ernie's widow is that she felt that Ernie had been downgraded in the story, and in a way, the one thing I wanted to reassure her was, if I did nothing else with this, was to reclaim Ernie as 50% of that double act. And he's a genius, and also his decision, as somebody who had been a child star, who had been the centre of attention, to mock his very own roots, to mock his pretensions to stardom, and that's when they took off as a double act. Because, and as Eric said, but we're both idiots. That's the key to it. So they were both very generous with their time and so on. And the other thing is, I think it was probably the kind of whole interviews that are available then are a lot looser and a lot less controlled by publicists and so on. So there's a lot of very kind of I think somebody would take a crate of ale to a dressing room and just sit and chat to them all night, and they talk about that's the scene, and the whole Glasgow Empire stuff and Des O'Connor fainting and all of that. So you should be able to work something up from that material. But what was clear about Eric, and talking to Eric's son as well, is capturing that energy that he's never off. He was never off. He'd go to a dinner party, he'd say, meet the wife, don't laugh. And never off. And that's both maddening and the source of his genius. So in a way, you're writing a marriage and a couple. And how's this going to work? And that's where it came from.
Beautiful. Can I ask, I want to ask a bit about casting. I know perhaps that's not strictly speaking our job as writers, but we often get involved and obviously we have strong opinions about these things. So, I mean, Eric Morecambe was one of the most recognised people in the UK. So how do you find someone who can step into those shoes? I'd like to ask you the same question, Paul. Pete first. Well,
it helped that Johnny Campbell, who directed that, his background was comedy before it was drama. And Daniel Rigby, who played Eric, was doing stand-up. And, you know, Daniel's remarkable.
Extraordinary.
I mean, the hair and makeup's great and everything, but it is remarkable how he transforms himself. Because he doesn't really look like him, but there is something in his... He was in Accidental Death of an Anarchist recently. There's something in his comedy that is very Morecambe-esque, if you like. So he was unknown, but it became clear fairly early. I'd worked with Brian Dick before he was in Blackpool, and I knew he'd been he'd come through song and dance rather than and so on. So, but basically there was a lot of evenings where we'd have lots of photographs out on the floor for young Eric and Ernie, mid Eric and Ernie, and old Eric and Ernie, and then somebody would start moving the cards about and everybody would fall out. So it was a case of, you know, it was I think looking first for comedians was a good instinct. And so, you know, that's how it went about, and Victoria was always going to be Sadie. And I think Jim Moyer was Victoria's idea, and it was a brilliant idea. I think he's, you know, I don't think
It's gorgeous, yeah, it's a brilliant performance, yeah. Paul,
Yeah, so with Bob Golding, who plays Eric in The Last Laugh, I saw him in a one-man play. I don't know if anybody here saw a play called Morecambe. It was a one-man play which did once again, it started in Edinburgh, did a UK tour. It was a brilliant one-man play about Eric's life. And I saw Bob in that. And obviously, as someone who was just obsessed with that sort of comedy and Eric Morecambe, when I watched this play, I was like, I can't believe it. I felt I'd found somebody, you know, in the writer of that, a guy called Tim Whitnell. I don't know if you know Tim, who's brilliant, won a BAFTA and an Olivier. He's, you know, he wrote that, and I thought I found my tribe, you know, people who are the same. So Bob became a friend, and then I sort of wrote this knowing that I had Bob, knowing that I had Damian, who's a friend. And then it was Bob Golding, who plays Eric, who told me about, he said, you've got to see this guy who plays Bob Monkhouse. He's unbelievable. He is Bob Monkhouse, and I'm sure you'll agree from the film. It's like, it's uncanny, isn't it? He is Bob Monkhouse. There's no doubt about it. So once I had him, I had the three of them, and that's when I started thinking, you know, oh wow, and they've all got such different approaches to comedy as well. That's when I felt I had something, you know, a little bit special. So.
Oops, sorry. And Damian, for you, I mean, how did you, the three actors playing these three roles, how did you work together? Because we get a real sense of a kind of deep connection between them and the way they kind of wind each other up and all of that. How did you arrive at that? I mean, obviously, it's because Paul wrote it that way.
I mean, we found more of that, interestingly enough, doing the play. I mean, the film, we got together, because I knew Bob, I've known Bob for a long time. I didn't know Simon. Very well.
Bob who played Eric.
Bob who played, yes.
Not Bob.
Confusing, yeah. Bob who played Eric, I knew. Simon who played Bob, I didn't know. So the film, the interestingly enough, now we've done the tour and the play, we've found more, and we get on. We have to get on because we spend so much time together. So, but the film was done really quickly in a few days, wasn't it?
I think 2 days.
2
yeah.
days, I think we did. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it didn't really
And it's interesting now watching it, isn't it? Because
now
I'd change it so, but we found so much more in the play. I think.
Well, I hadn't watched the film for a long time, and having done the play and then coming back, and I said to you when it finished, well, it's weird seeing that because you know, different choices that we now do in the play that we didn't do in the film. Anyway, so but yes, so we have a really good relationship now, the three of us. But I knew Bob, who plays Eric, as I said, not Bob, who plays Simon, but Bob. But yeah, so yes. What was the question? But yeah, no, we do get on. We do, and
But it is like that relationship. Your relationship is a bit like their relationship. It's really interesting.
It's funnily enough, the dressing room, us getting ready in the dressing room, is a bit like the film.
Yeah.
Because, you know, it's all that banter and us taking the piss out of each other that we do naturally anyway. So
we did sort of, we mentioned New York earlier. I do want to slightly ask about that. Not Just because, I mean, Morecambe and Wise themselves performed in America. They were on the Ed Sullivan show. And
16 times.
16 times.
Tommy was on it about 8 times, I think.
Yeah, I mean, so I wanted to ask what your thoughts were, and Pete as well, about, is there something peculiarly and particularly British about Morecambe and Wise, or is the appeal something more universal?
Do you want?
Well, tell us what happened in New York. Is what I'm really saying.
Basically, we went to New York. We just finished in the West End, and it went down brilliantly. And people loved these guys in the UK, and we had a ball doing the play, and you could feel the love and the emotion from every audience we go to in the UK. We went to New York, and they didn't know who we were. They didn't know who these guys were. They just thought we'd written this play about 3 comics in a dressing room.
Right.
So they enjoyed the play, but they didn't know us. So they didn't know all the iconics, all the gags, all the the classic Tommy stuff, the Eric stuff. They just weren't laughing at any of that because they didn't get it. They just said, "What's this?" There was a classic. The opening of the play, I come on, and the lights go up, and Tommy's just in his pants and his vest and chicken feet with the fez on. Over here, you used to do that, the lights went up and it went, woof, massive laugh before the play started. New York, our opening night, I remember I went on, there's chicken feet, I stood like that, the lights went up, nothing. No, apart from one woman at the back who went, "You forgot your pants." And I remember thinking, this is going to be a long night. And it was.
Yeah.
Wow.
But I had an amazing time. We had 5 weeks in New York at the most amazing time. And as I say, as a play, they liked the play. They just didn't know who any of us were. So that was the hardest part.
There wasn't the love there, was it?
No,
There wasn't that sort of love, when the guys walked out on stage in the West End or on tour, there was just love. You feel the love in the room for them.
Yeah,
I think there was love tonight.
Absolutely. And I think that there's something, the reaction of audiences to these characters is there's something very distinctive about it because it's so warm. There is a sense of love of these.
I think it's more than that as well. I think it's to do with families. I really do. Having done it a lot now and watched it a lot and watched, in the play, watched grown men, 60-year-old men crying. And I think they do think of their families. It's about, it's to do with nostalgia and it's to do with, I know I think of my family, and it is like, so it is about them and how brilliant they were because they were incredibly talented and unique, really. And I think in Tommy's case and Eric's case, unique individuals, performers, but we love them because our families love them and because the nation loves them, I think.
Pete, can you talk a bit about the reaction to your film? And also, did the film travel? I mean, is it something that's been seen around the world? And have you had sort of feedback from maybe people who didn't grow up with Morecambe and Wise?
No.
Fair enough.
I don't think it was shown. I don't think it was shown in the States.
Right.
A strange thing happened with Blackpool. That Blackpool was shown on BBC America in the States, and it got a Golden Globe nomination. And then they decided they wanted to make an American
remake
version.
it, yes.
And I said, but the whole thing about Blackpool, it's a man in Blackpool who thinks he's in Vegas. So what's the I don't get it. What's the American? And my agent said, well, just let them do it. You'll get an exec producer credit. And Hugh Jackman optioned it, and he was going to be Ripley. Then he read the script, decided he wasn't. I didn't have anything to do with the script, but they decided they were going to leak some on YouTube deliberately. And they leaked Hugh Jackman doing a karaoke version of Sympathy for the Devil, which is like the worst karaoke. It isn't a karaoke song. Wow. And the first comment under the YouTube clip was, "What is this shit?" And then, so by leaking it from the studio, they'd already killed it.
Oh my God.
And it never really come from that. And when the first episode went out, the review went, this, because you always remember the bad reviews.
God, of course.
It was, there's no question this is the worst show of the new season. The question is it the worst show of all time?
Oh, God. Wow.
So they didn't show Eric Ernie, and I'm possibly glad they didn't.
Wow. Wow. So you had that kind of Morecambe and Wise, the box that they were buried in kind of moment.
Absolutely, yeah.
Oh, God. Guys, let's open it out to you.
Hello. Thanks so much for being here and sharing your backgrounds and insights. And I'd like to ask for a particular insight. You were just talking about some of the specificity of the British humour. But there was a line in Eric and Ernie that really stuck with me, the northern humour. And speaking as a southerner in the north, I am curious if you could shed some light on the specificity of northern humour, perhaps in contrast to southern humour. Assuming that we are from the south have a sense of humour.
I was about to say that it's funny, that's number one. I would say there is a rhythm. There is a comic rhythm. I'd even say, I mean, Ernie was from Yorkshire, I'd say it's almost a northwestern thing. I think there's a different comic rhythm, for example, in the northeast. I think that, but I think a lot of it might be to do with the era and class as much as anything, because, I can, Only Fools and Horses is a southern comedy. It seems to me and it maybe come back to family and the rhythm of the kind of jokes and the to and fro that you make because you are familiar with each other. But I think in terms of northern comedy, from that tradition at least, because obviously now, because of television, because of the speed of communication and so on, it's all more mixed. I think it would allude to a certain kind of hardship and a certain kind of, there's obviously this, I think there's an Irish rhythm in Northwest humour as well. So I think it's rhythm, but I think actually it probably comes down to the talent. When I was growing up, if it was Southern humour, it just tended to be, what I remember of Southern humour when I was growing up was like Terry and June, even Fawlty Towers, these were middle-class comedies. So I wonder if it's almost
class.
a
Definitely.
class thing. Is it, because I don't hold with the. I also think that Coronation Street had a massive impact on how Northern humour was. It's an early Coronation Street, incredibly funny show.
Yeah.
And then that becomes the rhythm that people assume is going to be comic. That and saying hello on the underground to people. I don't know if that's clear.
No, that's right. I think that, 100%.
I'll agree with Bob Monkhouse's statement that he was never going to achieve the iconic status of Tommy Cooper and Eric Morecambe.
Yes, I do. Personally, I mean, I'm a huge Bob Monkhouse fan, and interestingly, I think people are sort of rediscovering just how good Bob Monkhouse was now. I think when he was alive, maybe he was viewed as more as a game show host, and maybe people thought he was a little bit smarmy. He was very American in his style, and exactly what, he was from the South. He was actually very middle class. He came from quite a wealthy family, Bob Monkhouse. So there is, a really good example of the difference, if you like, between Eric in particular and Bob. Yeah, I think there was, as I say, I think Bob's been rediscovered. I hope he is, because he was undoubtedly a brilliant comedian, and maybe it doesn't come over in the short film, but certainly in the play, it's like a deep dive into comedy, isn't it? And what makes something funny. And Bob Monkhouse was a genius at that. He really would. He would polish a joke. There's a whole section in the play about polishing and honing a joke, and just taking that word out there and moving the pause to there to try and get, make that laugh a little bit bigger. So I don't think he's loved, let's say, as much as Tommy and Eric, but he was undoubtedly a great comedian.
I think the lovability is the thing. I think he wasn't through no fault of his own, wasn't.
Yeah.
He just wasn't as immediately lovable as that.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, yeah.
And he had to do the game show. There was nowhere really for him to ply his trade, maybe on television. So he ended up doing the game shows. So he was known as that. But you watch those game shows now, you see how many gags he comes up with. He's not just, a lot of people who present game shows these days, they just present the game shows. They're not doing gags. You watch those old shows of Bob's, he's doing gag after gag after gag. So much material. He was brilliant.
My wife and I were very fortunate to see the last laugh in Manchester last year.
Oh, brilliant.
And it was absolutely hilarious. I do hope you tour again.
We
It
are,
is.
yes, we are
This year?
This year.
So my question, if I may, is more of a general question. I stumbled across a true story which was played out in and around Lancaster at the start of the 1800s. Fascinating story that involved an admiral, a castle, a forged will, a cunning servant, even the king was involved, and an intractable court case which influenced Charles Dickens in his writing of Bleak House. You may know the story of Hornby Castle dispute. And my question is, how do local people such as myself get a local screenwriter to consider a local story? And luckily enough, I have a treatment here. That's not too cheeky.
That's a can of worms. I would say write it. Write it yourself. Do the work. Do the research. Put in the passion. The thing is, people often ask us as writers, I've got a great idea, you should do it. But we've also got our ideas, and there's something about, there's just so much work goes into anything that you're working on that you kind of want to kind of generate it yourself. So I would say, you write it and then get it out there. I'm sorry, I know I'm slightly dodging the question there. Any other thoughts, guys?
Yeah, I agree. Just do it, and you've got to push, and you just have to keep going. I'm sure everybody here has had rejection after rejection, but if you believe in it, you just keep going and keep pushing. And you're absolutely right to bring it here tonight. Things like that is a great step forward. I'd say give it to Peter, not me. But no, but seriously, doing that is a good. It's that sort of drive and that ambition. Just keep going with it. Yeah. I'd say keep going.
There is a great facility that never existed when I was starting out as a writer, which is the BBC Writers website. And one of the things they have on there is a fantastic archive of scripts, including Pete's. So it's a brilliant resource for anybody who wants to kind of learn about the practical nuts and bolts of script writing. But the other thing they do is every year they have an open script window. So do some work. You've been involved in that, haven't you? So yeah, work on the script, and then the next time the BBC Writers window opens, get it in there, and they make a selection, and people get sort of selected people get feedback, and the BBC work with them, and so on. It's anyway. In any case, it's a fantastic resource and one that's well worth getting to know. Thank you.
So, 2026 is Morecambe celebrating Eric Morecambe's birthday, and I'm just thinking, what would you say to a sort of 17-year-old in Morecambe who's saying, what's that got to do with me? What's the connection between Morecambe and Wise and a 17-year-old?
Well, I would say that, this is something that's quite close to my heart because I write a show that's set here, and the very fact that we're in this building now and we're on the first night of this festival suggests that there is something, there is a kind of there's a cultural life and energy in this place, and I think Eric Morecambe is part of that, as someone, you know, who came out of this place and, you know, became the legendary entertainer he was. But I also think nowadays the work that people like the Bay Film Festival are doing and various festivals around town, and you know, we all know how hard it is to work in the arts and to get anything off the ground. So I would, you know, really encourage that 17-year-old. It's not specifically about Eric Morecambe, but it's about the kind of creative energies in this place, and to just get out there and do some stuff. And for example, if they wanted to try stand-up, then they might very quickly find that actually the kind of model of Eric Morecambe is an interesting one to look at. But it doesn't have to be stand-up. It could be anything. It could be, you know, poetry or anything. It's just about being creative and getting your work out there. That's what I think. Any thoughts?
Just means, yeah, just as an example, I would say, look what can be achieved. You know, I mean, it's quite an American thing, isn't it? Is you can be this, you can be president, you can go all the way in America. It's very American
not a good
thing.
example, that one.
Maybe not that, but it's a very American sort of dream. That, whereas in Britain, it's a little bit more, you know, you stay in your lane a little bit more. Whereas I think Eric, Tommy, anybody who achieves anything, it just shows, look where Eric came from, amazing, you know, and what he became. So hopefully it's just a good example, I would say.
And also, we were in Alveston today.
Oh yeah, we went.
And like, you know, we were thinking like Stan Laurel. We walked around Alveston, this tiny little, you know, quite a pretty little town. But you know, Stan Laurel was like one of the biggest Hollywood comedy actors, and it's like
amazing,
amazing. And we just
one of the biggest star in the world at the time, you know.
Yeah. And so that's going back to what you said.
I think I'd hope that even when I wrote that, which was a few years ago,
2011 it came out.
Even then, I would hope it wasn't just a piece of nostalgia, because I heard it, in a way, writing about Eric Morecambe provided me with a vehicle to write about family and to write about relationships and to write about relationships between the young and the old and what ambition might be, and even, you know, what your parents' ambition might be and how that might affect, you know, that I hope that would serve as a vehicle of that. I don't deny that it had great commercial appeal to the BBC, because it's part of BBC's kind of seen as part of their golden age. But I think everything I write, I would hope, just as, you know, I can enjoy comedy that is clearly targeted at 17-year-olds, because in the end, the sort of universal ways of, you know, looking at love, family, relationships, and so on, you know, it's just a vehicle for looking at that. So those stories don't go away, because otherwise we wouldn't still be reading Shakespeare, we wouldn't still be reading Dickens. But I think, you know, what you'd hope someone would take from it wouldn't necessarily just be a kind of nostalgia thing. I think I'd be slightly disappointed if that's all it got, if that's all it achieved.
I really enjoyed both those films. This is a question for Peter. I really love the way you seeded, like, bits of Eric Ernie's act in moments of them growing up. When you kind of discovered them, which were your favourite bits?
Sorry?
Which were your favourite bits?
I think the fact that the Greek urn gag was very, very early. It was somebody else's gag and they nicked it, and it was very early. That it was when they were boys they were doing that. And that ran right through to, you know, they'd still allude to it in the Christmas specials and so on. So I think that in particular, and I think there was a moment where, and it was before Eddie Braden was writing for them, but they were just like this set of gags that every comic duo was doing. It was just taken for granted you'd all do them, a bit like bands doing cover versions.
and they found a way to do them. So I think that last part, the bit, you know, the joke about his dad, and it was a lovely finish, and all the rest of it. But also the fact that of all the things to win round a Glasgow Empire audience, it was Woody Woodpecker.
Yeah, brilliant.
So yeah, but I think the Greek urn thing, the fact that it's an archaeology question anyway. So the fact you could take that back to their very early formation, and they ran it all the way through. That's kind of got a special glow to it for me.
I was really pleased to see in the main film the reference to Laurel and Hardy, and I just wondered if we had reference from Eric and Ernie about how much of an influence they were.
Go on, sorry, Peter, go on.
I think that Eric and Ernie, Laurel and Hardy. One famous story is that Eddie Brabham only persuaded them to do the sketch where they were both in bed together by saying, well, if it was good enough for Laurel and Hardy. And Eric said, okay, but I'll have a pipe, which will denote masculinity. I think they're a great... I mean, if you hear the early radio shows that Eric and Ernie did, Ernie's virtually doing an American accent.
Yeah.
They had to find them, so they didn't think what they had was special enough, and it's that American comedy thing, and shaking, that's off. So I think they were influenced as a physical double act, I would say, more than the wordplay. I think the wordplay is closer to Marx Brothers and possibly, but I think their physical comedy is definitely rooted in Laurel and Hardy.
Definitely, and I think if you, we know Gary Morecambe, Eric's son, very well, and he has a theory that what you remember are the visual. If you think of Morecambe and Wise in particular, you have visual memory, so you will think of them doing, what's the South Pacific number they do? Nothing like a Dame, doing Sing in the Rain, doing the stripper routine. Those are the images you remember. Probably Andre Previn you'll remember as well, but you remember visual images, interestingly, more than the sort of crosstalk. They must have done hundreds, if not thousands, of those opening monologues, whereas you actually don't. Not monologues, duologues, I guess. You don't remember those as much. You remember the classic scenes, which are visual. I love the gag. Ben and I were talking about the gag you put in there, where it says, "Oh, I've forgotten what she looks like." What's the matter? I just remembered. That made us laugh out loud. That's a great gag. So, yeah.
And on that note, thank you so much for coming this evening, and let's just give a big round of applause to our wonderful guests.
Thank you.